contributing to the legitimization of the junta. I would put it in stronger terms. It's an unlawful junta that is unlawful under domestic law, in clear violation of the then existing constitution, and it is unsupportable at international law, not least as a result of the criminal acts that they have committed. But my question is, not giving legitimacy, is that enough from the perspective of the NUG? What would you like the government of Canada to do that would not just not give legitimacy, but perhaps move in the direction of restoring the lawful authority or the lawfulness of authority within the country, and supporting, I believe you, as or the NUG, as both the legitimate and the better claim to lawful authority? That's my question for you. I have a question also for the Canadian politicians in the room, because my question is, it's obviously complicated within Myanmar, and what you're trying to also work out in terms of new governance arrangements and transition and so forth. But I'm thinking, what is it that Canada can do within Canada, the exercise of Canadian sovereignty? What is it that there's no obstacle to or barrier to do for Canada to do? And my question is to the politicians here, what are your positions with regard to, I think, 3 areas of action? One is political. For example, what is impinging or restraining or constraining direct political support from Canada to the national unity government? There's no obstacle in international law. I'm not aware of anything in our constitution that forbids this. And we have lots of historical examples around the world. So I'm interested to know what kind of direct political support, diplomatic representation, material support, training, all sorts of things I could imagine. Multilaterally, I also have a question. Canada, for after 2017 events, for about half a year, we chaired at multilateral level, today the UN, a group, kind of group of friends on the Rohingya. But it stopped after about 6 or 8 months, if maybe someone can correct me. We also had a Prime Minister's special envoy, who's now our ambassador, but hasn't been replaced. So, I mean, these are things you don't need to ask anybody about. You don't need to seek any resources. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. What happened? Why are we not doing that anymore? And similarly, why not more material support? For example, training, provision of expertise. There's lots of things we could do. These are commonly done by our neighbor to the south through the National Endowment for Democracy, through NDI, through lots of institutions. We just don't seem to do it. The second question I would have connect to this item is, what about our assistance for refugees and resettlement? I mean, I've been watching the situation in your country, Mr. Deputy Minister, for about a third of a century now. I'm sorry to say I'm that old. And at this moment, to my knowledge, we still have a pretty small diaspora in this country. My knowledge, we just talked about Rohingya, maybe 1,000 Rohingya, even though there's about 2 million plus, 2.5 million maybe distributed around the world. Is it that impossible for us to be more assisting in terms of providing some and facilitating? And similarly in that vein, what's stopping us from providing educational and humanitarian assistance directly to a lot of those in need? I know we have contributed financial contributions, particularly in the context of Bangladesh, but I'm thinking more like tailored, targeted programs of, it doesn't even have to be physically bringing people. One could do virtual education delivery for women young women in camps or something. I just don't see much happening. That's all within the province of Canada to do. So concretely, what is whether you're part of a caucus of government or whether you're in opposition, is there something you have in mind that we could do concretely that does not depend on anyone else? Thank you.
And to do what is as well Canada is preaching across the world, to promote human rights, democracy, to act upon those values and principles that we are preaching around the world. we are in the race of, we're in a race with in the autocracy and democracy. And the amount of support that autocrats are giving to their partners are much more visible and higher in order to maintain their power of wealth and to keep the country as autocracy. But we are not getting from our democratic friend to the level of support that we deserve. So I think it's time for Canada who want to make a really humble call that the time is very short, that we are very, very in a dangerous junction now with what is happening in the region geopolitically. And we truly need your support, including to tackle the most complicated, the Rohingya crisis. Rohingya crisis can never be solved unless the Burma is fully in the hand of the civilian and exercising an inclusive federal democracy institute. Otherwise, the solution that we are seeking for the Rohingya will be a short-term one. It will, the cycle will come back, and Bangladesh will keep suffering. So it is very, very important. Canada has a concrete policy both on the Rohingya issues and the Burma democratization process. How, when, what, within given constraints and limitations that Canada has. There is no unlimited resource that Canada has, but we are also aware that Canada is capable of doing more than one thing at a time. It doesn't have to be Ukraine or Gaza or Afghanistan. And despite their competing priorities, we know you're wise enough to and capable as well to shift some of those resources and attention to the